Welcome to my podcast.
Have you ever, really thought about the words yes and no as adverbs?
I mean, mostly we just think of them as answers, right?
Right. Somebody asks you a question, you say yes, and that's it. Complete sentence.
Yeah, we treat it like the end of the conversation.
Exactly. But fundamentally, mechanically, they are modifiers. They're adverbs. And today, we're taking a deep dive into some really specific linguistic notes that you, our listener, actually sent in. It's an excerpt from Fundamentals of Spanish Adverbs and Locutions.
Yeah, and it's a great excerpt because, we usually approach grammar like reading a manual for assembling a bookshelf.
Oh, totally. Here are the parts. Put them together.
Exactly. You have your nouns, which are your wooden planks. You have your verbs, which are the screws holding it all together. And it feels very binary, right? It either holds books or it collapses.
Mm-hmm.
But language isn't just structural like that.
Right, because when you step into the actual everyday use of a language, that raw wooden bookshelf just isn't enough. You need to know how those books are arranged or, the lighting in the room. I like to think of it like this. If nouns and verbs are the bricks and mortar of a house, adverbs are the interior design.
I love that analogy. They really are.
Yeah, they dictate how, when, and where people are actually living inside that house. And that's really the mission of this deep dive today.
It is. We are going to decode the architecture of Spanish adverbs. And not by memorizing some endless vocabulary list, but by understanding the conceptual blocks. Adverbs are really the seasoning of language. They give context, flavor, and direction to our actions.
Yeah, because without them, communication is just like a series of robotic statements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're looking at how Spanish speakers map their reality.
So if we're doing the interior design of this linguistic house, we need a reliable way to create that style. We need a mechanism, right?
Mm-hmm.
The foundation of this, the most universal tool for creating adverbs in Spanish, is the mente formation. The notes you sent us highlight this as the basic formation rule, but let's actually look at the machinery here, because a rule isn't helpful if we don't know how the gears turn. How does this conveyor belt actually work?
Well, you take a basic descriptive word, an adjective. Let's use lento, which means slow. In Spanish grammar, to run this through the adverb machine, you first take the feminine form of that adjective. So lento becomes lenta.
Wait, I have to pause you there.
Sure.
Why the feminine form? If the word is lento, why not just make it lentamente? Why do we have to switch it to lenta first?
That actually goes back to the Latin roots of the language. The suffix mente comes from the Latin word mens or mentis, which meant mind or state of mind. And in Latin, that noun was feminine.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, so historically you were saying something was done with a slow mind, a lentamente. And over centuries, those two words just sort of fuse together into a single adverb.
That is wild. So every time someone says lentamente or rapidamente, they're historically saying with a rapid state of mind.
Precisely. The feminine agreement stuck around as a ghost of that original Latin noun. But functionally, in modern Spanish, it operates purely as an efficient rule. You take the adjective, apply the feminine form if it has one, attachmentente, and boom, you have a new tool. Think about the cognitive relief this provides for someone learning the language.
Oh, for sure. Instead of memorizing a completely disconnected vocabulary word for every single adverbial concept, you just learn the mechanism.
Exactly.
It's essentially a linguistic factory. You put a word in, apply the rule, add in mente, and out pops an adverb. So the mente words give us the style of an action, like you ran quickly, you spoke softly. But style doesn't really matter if you don't know where or when you're running.
Right, you need context.
We need to ground the action in reality, which brings us to a category in your notes that sounds incredibly heavy. The text calls them nuclear or predicate adverbs, specifically circumstantial.
It's a big term.
It is, and I have to push back on this terminology a bit. Circumstantial sounds so legal. Why not just call them location and time words? Why make it sound like a crime scene?
It's funny you say that, but legal terminology actually borrows from the same conceptual root. In law, circumstantial evidence relates to the exact conditions surrounding an event, the setting, the environment.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
And in linguistics, the predicate is the action of the sentence. It's the verb. So when we call these adverbs nuclear, we mean they form the absolute core reality of that verb.
So they are the structural pillars of the sentence's reality, like the stage directions.
Stage directions are a great way to look at it. Any action has to occur within 3 literal dimensions. Your notes isolate these as place, time, and quantity. You literally cannot build a meaningful narrative without defining these coordinates.
Let's pull the exact vocabulary for these coordinates, starting with place. The source lists aquí, aquí, and ali. Here, there, and over there.
Right, the three distinct spatial zones.
This is where I struggle a bit because the spatial awareness in Spanish seems so much more finely tuned than what I am used to in English.
Oh, absolutely.
We mostly just bounce between here and there. If something is really far away, maybe we say why over there and gesture wildly. But Spanish gives you three distinct built-in distances.
It does, yeah. It demands a lot of spatial awareness.
So let's break these down. If I am holding an apple, that is aquí, right?
Yes, exactly. Aquí is your immediate proximity. It is the space occupied by the speaker.
Okay, and if the apple is across the street, that's ali, definitively far away.
Right. Ali is removed from both the speaker and the listener. It is a separate space entirely.
So what is ahi? Wait, so it's not here, but it's not over there. It's right there. How do we define that middle zone?
Well, ahi is often the space occupied by the listener. So if you are holding the apple, it is aquí. If I'm holding the apple and you're talking to me, to you that apple is a.
Oh, I see. It's in the middle distance.
Right. It pushes the boundary out just enough to be out of your immediate reach, but it is still within the immediate sphere of the conversation.
That forces you to be so physically present in the interaction. You literally cannot describe the circumstance of an action without actively measuring the space between you, the person you are talking to, and the rest of the world.
Exactly. It requires the speaker to constantly assess physical distance with a very high degree of precision. And by categorizing these as nuclear circumstantial adverbs of place, the grammar demands spatial awareness. And the exact same principle applies to the second circumstance, which is time.
Right, the temporal coordinates. The notes provide three anchors here. We've got ahora, meaning now, hoy, meaning today, and mañana, meaning tomorrow.
So if the place adverbs give us our spatial map, these give us our timeline. Ahora is the immediate, fleeting present moment.
The right now.
Exactly. Hoy broadens that to the current cycle of the sun, the day we are actively experiencing. And mañana points toward the future. They are the essential anchors.
So we have where the action is happening and when the action is happening. The final circumstantial category is quantity. I like to think of this as the volume knob for the action.
The volume knob. I like that.
The source gives us poco for a little, mucho for a lot, and bastante for enough, or quite a bit.
And you really want to look closely at bastante sitting in that list. Poco and mucho are the extremes of quantity. They are abstract measurements.
Right, they're just points on a scale.
But bastante implies the satisfaction of a requirement. It means enough. It shows that these circumstantial adverbs aren't just cold data points. They're inherently tied to human needs and human judgments of the circumstances.
That transitions us perfectly, actually, because once you set the circumstances, like we know where it happened, when it happened, and how much of it happened, you naturally arrive at the result of the action. This is the next layer of our linguistic house.
Resultative adverbs.
Right. The notes introduce resultativos, and the two core words provided are bien, meaning well or good, and mal, meaning poorly or bad. But wait, bien and mal aren't circumstances. They feel like a review of a restaurant.
That's a great way to put it. They are an evaluation. We have shifted from the objective setting to the subjective outcome.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're categorized separately from circumstances because they don't tell you the background details of the event. They judge the execution of the predicate.
Let's build a hypothetical scenario to keep these distinct, to really show how a sentence grows. Let's say the verb, the action, is cooking. You are cooking a meal.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you are cooking that meal today, which is hoy, our temporal coordinate, and you are doing it in the kitchen right where you are standing, aquí, our spatial coordinate, those are the undeniable circumstances. You can't argue with them.
Right. It is today and you are here.
Exactly. But when we drop bien or mal into that sentence, we change the entire reality of the experience. We're telling people if you actually made a good dinner or if you burned it.
Because the circumstances simply exist. The resultative adverbs carry the weight of human judgment. If the verb is to cook, the resultative adverb steps in to say, here is the final verdict on that cooking.
The ultimate verdict. Using bien doesn't just describe the verb, it validates it. It tells the listener that the action was successful. It's fascinating how much power these tiny words hold over the sentence. We spend all this time setting up the time and the place, but the listener is really just waiting for the bien or the mal. They are waiting for the result.
It is an incredibly powerful part of the sentence. And yet there is one more layer, the architecture of these notes takes us even deeper.
Right. We're not done yet.
No, because beneath the style of the Mente words, beneath the circumstances of time and place, and even beneath the subjective judgments of bien and mal, there is a foundational binary.
This is what blew my mind at the very beginning of our deep dive. The text calls this section otros tipos, other types, specifically identificativos polares, polar identifying adverbs. And the words are sí and no, yes and no.
We are so accustomed to treating yes and no as standalone conversational tools that we entirely forget their grammatical function.
No, if I say no voy, I am not going, the no is literally an adverb.
It is modifying the verb voy. It is entirely altering the reality of that action. You are definitively declaring whether the predicate exists in reality or does not exist in reality.
Yeah.
Affirmation versus negation.
Wow.
It is the ultimate modification.
Looking at the terminology the notes use, polar identifying, calling them polar means they are absolute opposites. They are the north and south poles of communication.
Exactly.
By using sí or no, you are identifying the absolute positive or negative pole of an action. You have bypassed the circumstances, you have bypassed the result, and you are simply establishing existence versus non-existence.
It strips all the ambiguity out of the language.
And what I find brilliant about these notes is that they don't just leave us isolated at those two poles. The source material provides the perfect add-ons, the words of inclusion and exclusion. We've got también meaning also and tampoco meaning neither.
Right, so if sí and no are the polar extremes, también and tampoco act as their echoes. They are how we align ourselves with those poles in a social context.
It's like a magnetic field. If sí is the North Pole, también is the compass needle swinging to point at it. Let's say someone establishes a positive pole with an action. They say, I'm going to the party. They have created a sí reality.
Yep, a positive charge.
If I want to align with that magnetic charge, I use también. I am going also. The compass needle snaps to the North Pole.
And if they establish a negative pole, say, I'm not going to the party, they've created a no reality. You use tampoco to echo that negation.
Me neither.
The compass needle snaps to the South Pole. This is how the rest of the conversation falls into alignment with the established charge.
The psychological weight of these mechanics is staggering when you really unpack them. It's not just a list of words. It is a complete system for navigating human interaction.
When you stop looking at grammar as a cold, hard set of instructions and start seeing these words as categories of human experience like circumstances, results, polar absolutes, the language stops being intimidating. It becomes a map of how people think.
It really does. It shows us how Spanish speakers place themselves in space and time and how they connect with the people around them. So what does this all mean for you, our listener, who handed over these notes? Let's trace the architecture of the house we just built.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. We started with the interior design, looking at the amente formation rule. We learned the actual machinery of taking an adjective, finding its feminine form, and transforming it into an adverb of style.
Right, the linguistic factory.
Exactly. Then we poured the concrete foundation. We moved into the nuclear adverbs, building the actual circumstances of our reality. We didn't just learn here and there. We learned to navigate the three distinct spatial zones of aquí, ají, and allí.
We anchored ourselves in time with ahora, hoy, and mañana.
And we established volume with poco, mucho, and that fascinating threshold of satisfaction, bastante. From there, we cooked a meal and learned how to judge the outcome of our actions using resultatives like bien and mal, moving from objective setting to subjective verdict.
And finally, we stripped the entire house down to its absolute binaries, learning how to firmly declare existence or non-existence using polar adverbs, the sí and the no, and how to swing our compass needles to align with those poles using también and tampoco.
It is a masterclass in linguistic efficiency. By mastering just these specific categories outlined in the excerpt, you realize you already have all the tools you need to establish a setting, evaluate an action, and take a definitive stance.
You are no longer just memorizing vocabulary. You are operating the machinery of the language.
You have the blueprints, you can turn on the lights, set the temperature, and arrange the furniture however you want. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. Something that really struck me as we were unpacking those final absolute binaries.
Oh, I'm curious where you're going with this.
Well, the notes classify sí and no as polar adverbs, meaning they exist at the absolute opposite ends of a spectrum. They are the black and white of language. But if adverbs are meant to be the interior design of our communication, if they are meant to modify our actions to accurately reflect reality. Think about how often the human experience actually relies on the space between those poles.
That's a really deep question.
Right. When you use absolute polar words like see or no to modify your actions, does it leave any room for the complicated, messy gray areas of life? Or does the grammar itself, by providing us with these absolute polar modifiers, force us to be more definitive, more stark, living in rooms painted only in black and white? It's something to think about the next time you drop a C or a no into a conversation.